Over the last couple of years, there's been a real renewed interest in the Carcano series of rifles, with some of the major imports that we've seen from Italy and from Ethiopia. There's been a lot put on the market recently in a way that we haven't seen from military surplus rifles in a long time. And so for folks just getting into the hobby or people who've been doing it for a long time and looking to get some of those good old days prices, the Carcano is one of the only ways you can really do that anymore. And as it's a rifle that's had a not great reputation for a number of reasons, mainly due to the availability of ammunition and more or less the availability of correct ammunition that will actually function well in these rifles. A lot of new owners have gotten them and experienced a lot of frustrations not getting these things to shoot. Whether you see people who simply can't get any accuracy because the bullets are not the correct diameter for the rifles that are available on the market, people getting frustrated because their rifles seem to hit feet high at 50 or 100 yards. They may be curiosities for some of these folks, but actually getting them to shoot is a different story. There's a lot of folks who will also say that, the Carcano is a relatively underrated rifle, and I think that is true. But then they actually go out and shoot these things and seem to be happy with getting 6-inch groups at 50 yards, which for me is just something that I would not accept as a shooter and, actually be able to enjoy the rifle that I was using. That's, smoothbore musket accuracy if you load those well. So I wanted to start a project where we actually try and get the Carcano to shoot well for a modern 21st century shooter. And what does that mean? It means, if you look at what the goal was for these rifles in a military perspective, the accuracy was decent enough for what they wanted to use, and of course, sighting these things high was, generally accepted. But what do we as shooters here in the 21st century want from our rifles, right? We want to be able to hit a target at 12 inches or less at 100 yards with consistency. And that's something you have difficulty doing with the Carcano for a number of reasons. So my project wants to take these rifles and actually try and stretch their legs and see what we can do as shooters with the equipment that's available to us in the modern day. Can we get these to shoot as well as they were expected to when they were military issue rifles, with what we have on the table as far as reloading components is concerned, the clips that are available to us? There's a lot of variables that go into getting these Carcanos to work well that I hope I can walk you through here and find solutions for us in the modern day to get our rifles working. Now, there's four main issues that I see with people getting frustrated with Carcanos, again, from the perspective of being a 21st century shooter with the items that we have to be able to keep these things running, right? So first and foremost is, of course, accuracy. The Carcano has always had a reputation for being a relatively inaccurate rifle. Whether that's earned or unearned, I think is a matter of debate. I think the Carcano that most people have experience with is, of course, these M91 carbines, which are being imported right now in very large numbers and have found their way into the gun safes of a lot of people over the last few years. Being a carbine with a 17.5-inch barrel, it's not going to have, supreme accuracy to begin with, but you should be able to at least nail a pie plate at 100 yards, which a lot of people have difficulty doing, mostly in terms of, or because it's hard to get the proper ammo or reloading components to actually make these work, right? Only one company is producing the proper bullets for these. I'm sure, as most people know, Carcanos really don't take the standard .264 diameter bullet that most other 6.5 cartridges do take. Most of the time, the original bullet was 266 in diameter. Most of these guns require a 266, 267, or 268 to function with any kind of accuracy. And at the point in time this video is being made, the only company producing that diameter bullet is PPU, and the bullets that they're producing in that diameter are not at all replicas of the original load, which was 162 grains. The PPUs, I think, are 129 and I think 135 or something like that, for both their soft point and their full metal jacket loads respectively. But I probably have those exact numbers wrong, but either way, it is not at all what the original Italian military used from the cartridge's adoption all the way through World War II, right? So this right here is an original Carcano bullet. Like I said, it is 266 diameter, weighs about 162 grains, and that is the exact projectile that was used from the time the cartridge was adopted all the way through the end of World War II. While everybody else modernized with a Spitzer bullet, the Italians actually tested those and found that the accuracy was not great in the gain twist style rifling that the Carcanos all had. Rather than change the rifling design, they elected to just stick with the old cartridge and run it through the entire service life of these rifles. What makes this very unique in terms of bullet design compared to what we can get on the market today is these have a hollow base. And what that will allow the base here to do is upon firing it will expand and sort of act as a gas seal within the rifling, and expand a little bit to prevent any kind of gas leakage from blowing by this bullet and causing it to destabilize. The closest bullet we have commercially available to this is Hornady's 160 grain .264 diameter bullet. The profile is very similar. The diameter is almost the same, but as you'll see here, it's a solid base bullet. Okay. Most Carcanos with a halfway decent bore, you can stick this right in the end, and it looks like, wow, that's really gonna take. But it's definitely wide enough to engage the rifling, but it's not wide enough to seal the bore. Okay, especially with that solid base. What happens is you will get a slight amount of gas blow by with these. It's going to destabilize the bullet and cause it to keyhole. I'd bet money that if there was a way to make a hollow base, kind of like the original has, it would probably seal well enough and shoot well enough for most people to be satisfied at 100 yards. But unfortunately, that's not what we have to work with, right? We have, maybe some folks will have tight enough bores on their guns that this will seal properly and work well, and great, you have something you might be able to go and pick up at your local Academy Sports or Bass Pro Shop and get off the shelf. But otherwise, you're going to be stuck ordering the PPU bullets that probably most reloaders who like to shoot their Carcanos are using. The second big issue with the Carcano is, of course, the sights. And this is, again, especially true if you are shooting the carbines that are widely available right now. So most people, when they get their Carcanos, they report that even if it does have halfway decent accuracy, they might be shooting a foot or two above their target at 50 and 100 yards. And that could be for a couple reasons. It could be that they're not either using the sight picture correctly, or they are, and it's just the fact that these guns were sighted to shoot, I think, at minimum 400 meters was their zero. Being a cartridge that uses these long torpedo type bullets, they're not as flat shooting as you might expect a 6.5 to be. So if you are shooting at these closer ranges, you can expect that arc to really be putting the bullet high, where another 6.5 similar to it wouldn't be. I'm sure most people at this point sort of know how to use the sights on the carbine. You have your post, you really need to bury it down in that V as much as you can, almost like a buckhorn sight. The difference with a buckhorn sight is you usually have it coming down, and then there's going to be a little notch in it where you'll put the post with perhaps like a bead on top of the buckhorn sight. You fit it right into that post, you're going to have a pretty easy way to line up with your target. The Carcano is not like that. Especially with these carbines, you have a really wide front sight. So even if you get it buried down in there, it is really, really difficult to have sort of a pinpoint sight. And even slight variations in how you might hold that are going to really affect where the bullet is going to hit at even 50 and 100 yards. And I found a way, at least on mine, to sort of remedy that. But even if you practice with your rifle and really try and learn where the sight picture is supposed to be, it's going to be really, really hard to get that same sight picture over and over and over again with one of these and get the kind of precision that you're going to be happy with at 50 and 100 yards. What I've done with my sight, and this was just kind of me playing around and experimenting, I actually took a piece of wire coat hanger and just glued it right to the top of there. And that's done two things for me. Number one, it's helped raise the front sight a little bit, which you really need to do if you are planning to shoot this at about 100 yards. And number two, it's created a nice round little bead that you can really get in the bottom of that V-notch and have it be in the same spot every single time. And to me, at least from the testing that I've done with this rifle so far, it's been a big help in actually getting it to shoot in the same spot every single time that you want it to. Third problem to address here is the overall reliability of these guns. Now, the Carcano is a really simple action. It had a great reputation for reliability in the field when it was issued, but again, from the 21st century shooter perspective, we have some things hampering that. It does load from an N-block system, and the clips that we have on the market are not very good, and they're not very durable. And that means even using original clips, which were really designed as a throwaway thing, it's very hard to keep them in working condition. And I think probably the most common failure people have is the sixth round jam, where regardless of what type of clip you're using, whether it's original or reproduction, on that sixth round, what happens is that clip starts popping out of the rifle instead of dropping down, and you end up sort of getting the bolt to then, instead of push the bullet into the chamber, it noses it upwards, and you got to kind of thumb it back down and then get it into the chamber. And pretty much, every Carcano I've owned has had that issue with a variety of clips. The best ones that I found, honestly, are the 3D printed ones, and the reason I think that is because they're thicker. They kind of grip against the wall of the rifle magazine a little bit better, and so they don't pop back out, and the bullets, the cartridges stay in the same track they're supposed to. Now, that means it's not going to drop free when it's empty, but from my experience, you can push them right back down and out with the next clip coming in. So there are some solutions to that reliability issue, but again, this is a really big problem for somebody who wants these rifles to be a good shooter. And four is consistency. And this is consistency across a wide range of things. These rifles were made for a very long period of time at a large number of arsenals with all sorts of different modifications that were done. Slight ones, especially in terms of the sights, but also in terms of the way that they were rifled, especially with the later M38s, getting rid of that gain twist rifling, and that goes for both the rifles and the carbines, while there's differences in bore diameter throughout the production. There's slight things that seem to really make a big deal in terms of performance. So things vary so much from rifle to rifle in a way that I haven't seen very much in any other type of system. So what really works well in my rifle may be horrible in yours. Usually there's some slight variations rifle to rifle. You find a pet load, but you take an identical rifle and it should shoot okay in it. It doesn't seem to be the case with these Carcanos. You might have a good load for one that will be all over the place in another. With the only one really being consistent is using the original projectiles as designed, but of course we can't get those anymore. So we have to do the best we can with what we're able to use. So we have issues with consistency from different manufacturers, rifles of different dates, and then from what I found is just use the same rifles having issues from range trip to range trip. I've gone through 3 of these carbines so far, this one being the best that I've had, at least in terms of shootability, while interestingly enough being the worst condition of the ones that I've had over the last few years. I've had them and I get them, think I find a great load, and then all of a sudden the next trip to the range is all over the place. Same load, same rifle, nothing has changed, and it's really, really hard to find something that the gun likes. If these guns worked, it would be my favorite gun to shoot. They are so short, so light, and just so fun to handle that, these little carbines would be so much fun to shoot. But the problem is they don't work very well. And what I'm hoping we can find with this test is a way to get these things working and a way that actually makes shooting them fun. Because this would be my favorite gun if it just worked right. Hopefully, with some testing, with some experimentation, we can make that happen. I've tried to do this before with other versions of this same carbine, and I've always abandoned them, whether it's just I didn't want to put the time or the money into it. But I keep coming back to them, and I'm hoping that this time I finally found a good one. I've taken this to the range a couple times, and I had a load that worked really, really well for it the first time I had it out.
I want to see if I can keep that level of performance going, because if I can, this is going to be a great rifle, especially if we can find a type of clip that works for it every single time. And I'm hoping you'll join me on this little journey that we're going to go on with these Carcanos, and hopefully some of the solutions that we find might just work for your rifle too. And if you love these little things as much as I do, that's going to be a great thing, and we can keep these Carcanos on the range, and hopefully give them a better reputation, one that I think they deserve, as long as we can find a way to make them work right.